Man, there's a lot to unpack today. We are still, and by the way, I was talking about this with Michael Young, track dude Michael Young, yesterday. And I know that it's like the lamest, most repeated topic probably, but it occasionally then pops back up where it becomes forefront. When did we as a culture or society start maybe sports is the reason for this. Maybe sports and its impact on the American culture can be seen with no greater example than what we do with holidays. Because you can ask yourself, why is it that before we even get to October, there's Halloween stuff all over the stores? Why did we start doing pumpkin spice stuff when it was still 85 degrees outside before a single leaf has turned? Why are we, and I'd like to know, somebody send me a text and or a tweet and or a whatever, an email, a call, the first time that you go into the store and see a specific Christmas-related display. Because we advance everything. We're in this huge hurry to get the stuff. And maybe that's because, say, the NFL set the example. Because we can't just wait for September for games to start. We've got to do fantasy football drafts and NFL draft and OTAs and schedule release, all of that, right? We've got to get. We're a now society. Got to have it now. Got to have it now. And so just yesterday, I'm driving around, and I'm like, I don't remember people decorating their entire front yard like the set of Psycho by October the 5th. I mean, we're 10 days into it now, and I'm like, wait, we're still over 2 weeks from Halloween. But we want things accelerated and advanced. We want everything now. Which is not unlike, for example, when players are injured. We want to know immediately and, when are they back? When are they back? What's the latest? What are we hearing? And I understand it. As the Colts get set for the Chargers, and what do we do today? We advance. We talked for the last couple of days about and looked back on and reflected on their win over Arizona. Now we advance, and on Wednesday we've turn the page almost officially on the calendar into the next week of the NFL, which is the LA Chargers. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. But the big question on this day, this Hump Day Wednesday, is, of course, what is the standing? Where are we in terms of the availability of players? Now, let's get to this in terms of the Colts. And good afternoon to you, by the way. My name is Jake Quarry. Corbin Lingenfelter is back in the mix. Eddie Garrison on vacation. Corbin, hello, please.
Hello, Jake.
Thank you. Well, to the listener, to everybody, to the entire audience that
Hello,
all
world.
are clamoring for the dulcet tones, the godlike sound of the voice of Corbin Lingenfelter, right?
Right. Hello, world.
I believe Mark Boyle said that you should be doing voiceovers for the rest of your life. Did he not?
That is right. He also said I make James Earl Jones sound like a pipsqueak.
Okay. That's probably true, right? Okay. So let's get you caught up on who's out before we hear from Shane Steichen. And I'm playing this for you just because literally it's only been in the last 20 minutes or so that Shane Steichen has given these updates. We know that Kenny Moore has been out. And he is a critical piece of the defensive backfield for the Colts. He's probably their most important player because as the nickel, things kind of have to shift around when he's not there. Anthony Richardson, obviously, we know is going to miss some time. And now we know how they're going to handle that situation. Shavarius Mooney Ward. He goes by Mooney. His name is Shavarius Ward. He suffered a second concussion. I don't mean he had back-to-back concussions. I mean he suffered a concussion in the pregame on Sunday, and that is the second that he has suffered so far in the last, couple of months. And so he is also one that we are waiting to see where things stand. And the concussion protocol can get tricky. And I don't know. I am not a neurologist. I had to see one a lot when I was a kid. But I don't know this, and I'm interested in hearing this from Ralph Reif when he joins us later in the program, and that is when you get to a point where you have had concussions close to one another, does that increase the possibility or the likelihood or the susceptibility of concussion moving forward, or delay your recovery from it, or is everybody different? That's one of the things I want to talk to Ralph Reif about. He's going to join us as he's been doing each week, and I'm thrilled for it. He's going to do so coming up at 1 o'clock. Jalen Jones, another one. We forget almost that Jalen Jones is a critical piece that was going to give them a lot of depth at that corner position, and yet he's been out. And we keep waiting for when that is going to get going. So let's begin with those first three, the big three there. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, we know the situation there with the fracture to the orbital bone. Mooney Ward with the concussion. Kenny Moore with his injury. The latest from Shane Steichen just moments ago on West 56th on those three, Richardson, Ward, and Moore.
As you guys know, we put AR on IR. He'll miss at least 4 weeks. I don't have an exact timetable on it. He'll be in and out, getting checkups, but he'll still be engaged, be in meetings, but obviously he'll have some medical attention and just praying for a healthy recovery there. Mooney is in the protocol, so we'll see how the week goes. Kenny Moore will return to practice today. He'll go through some individual and get him some reps today, so good to have him back.
Okay. So that's where things stand with those three. And I think that may mean Kenny Moore, we'll see whether that means he's a week away from actually getting on the field in game action or not. But as he said, good to have him back, right? Then you get the other situation at the quarterback position. The Colts yesterday, and it was peculiar because the Colts yesterday worked out 4 quarterbacks. You knew going into it that they were going to have to add a quarterback on the roster because of the fact that Anthony Richardson went to IR. Minimum 4 games. One would think beyond that. And you do feel for him. But again, he is a magnet to the bizarre. That's the one thing that we now know about Anthony Richardson. But they are in need of a quarterback, so they go out and they work out 4 guys yesterday. And then around the time, probably shortly after John got off the air yesterday, is when the news came out that Brett Rippon, whose uncle, not father, but Uncle Mark Rippon was, of course, a Super Bowl quarterback in Washington, did have a cup of coffee with the Colts and served as kind of a veteran mentor to Peyton Manning when Manning was still, everybody knew Peyton Manning was going to take every single snap. But they went through a series of different veterans that would be his backup to just kind of serve as a guide years ago. But Brett Rippon was the one that was tabbed, and he was not one of the 4 that worked out in the building yesterday, at least publicly, whose name was released. But he was recently released from Cincinnati, and what's interesting is the thought was, okay, so you have Riley Leonard, a young quarterback who did play well in preseason, and there were people going into the year that were like, you know what? Before we knew what Daniel Jones really was, and we had an idea of what we've seen from Anthony Richardson. But there were literally people that, I'm not saying I wasn't one of them. It's in the back of your mind as a fleeting thought of, do you just hand the keys over to Riley Leonard? Now, I know that sounds crazy now. I know it, and I hear people right now, what is this guy talking about? There is no one that was – no, I'm just telling you. After preseason game number 1, there were people that were like, you know what, they're going to be terrible anyway. Let's see what they have out of Riley Leonard. That was a narrative that was out there. And Riley Leonard, mobile quarterback, not a great thrower, etc. But when they sign Brett Rippon and they go out and they get him, then you ask yourself, okay, is this a sign to Riley Leonard of you're still not there, kid? You're still not ready to be a heartbeat away. We're going to have to go out and get somebody to immediately vault right in front of you because that's where Anthony Richardson was, instead of the natural progression of moving up. That became the question when Rippon was signed. Here is Shane Steichen on the pecking order now at the quarterback room.
Yeah, Brett Rippon, he'll be here later today. He's flying in, but excited about him. Obviously, a guy that's been doing it for a long time to the practice squad. Riley will be our backup this week. I love Riley. I think Riley's came in with the right mindset from day one, the way he works, the way he prepares. So it's a hell of an opportunity for Riley this week. And then like I said, he'll be our backup this week, and then we'll see how everything goes, through the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so there's your answer. Brett Rippon is not coming in to be the backup quarterback. This is not, obviously, he wouldn't even know the playbook, one would assume at this point. So he becomes your emergency quarterback now, and Riley Leonard, in fact, moves up. Question is, as I mentioned, yesterday, all these other quarterbacks are coming through, and then you got to feel for the guys that came in and worked out and thought, like, here's my chance. And then Brett Rippon all of a sudden is the one that gets signed, not to make a huge deal here out of what's going to be your number 3 or your emergency quarterback, but it is peculiar because you end up signing the guy that is not one you worked out. Shane Steichen on why exactly they would work guys out and then just basically go to your fantasy football waiver wire, pick a guy off a practice squad.
No, he was just the guy that we had on our radar, and, heard a lot of great things about him. Obviously, he had a chance. He was in Minnesota there for a little bit with Daniel. Daniel's got great things to say about him, his preparation, his work. Obviously played some good ball there in Denver. Boise State guy. A lot of my brothers went to Boise State. I talked to my younger brother last night. He's like, man, I was the ball boy when he was the QB there. I was like, well, he remember you? He's like, oh, yeah. So I'm going to have to hit him up on that one. But, yeah, excited to get him in here and get him learning the system.
Telling you, man, football – things intersect and intertwine. So that is where things stand over on West 56th in terms of the health status and those for today. So let's get to the other topic, if you will, that I was thinking about on my drive in today and last night. So I think I mentioned yesterday that I've become a little more intrigued in the Major League Baseball postseason than I have been in years past. And I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching last night the enthusiasm for Milwaukee and the Brewers fans, and I think I told you that I went to a Brewers game this year when IndyCar was there. Neat stadium. I love the city of Milwaukee. But one of the things I love about the Brewers, even though I'm not saying it's necessarily true, and even though people that are baseball enthusiasts can nuance and nitpick probably complete inaccuracies of what I'm about to say, the Seattle Mariners, the Milwaukee Brewers, in particular those two, if you are a passerby window shopper of the postseason, which admittedly I probably am, even though I love Dodger Stadium, even though I love Dodger Blue and the tradition and the heritage of the Dodgers, today is the anniversary of Kirk Gibson's home run, 37 years ago today, today or yesterday, I think it was today. 37 years ago. Hard to believe it's been that long. But iconic moments, right? The evil Dennis Eckersley on the mound. Here comes Kirk Gibson. Vin Scully on the mic. Jack Buck doing the call. I don't believe what I just saw. Great moments, baseball history. And then, of course, you can go back further. Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale or Ron Say, Pedro Guerrero. Jackie Robinson, it goes without saying. The history of the Dodgers. But the Dodgers have this unbelievable payroll. For that matter, the Blue Jays have an unbelievable payroll. Top 5. In Indiana, we naturally gravitate towards teams that we feel build it from like the bottom up. And piece by piece. And there's an irony there because you look at Indiana football and Curt Cignetti and what they're doing and the whole state captivated by it, and yet that is done with the number of players that transferred in with Cignetti from James Madison. And that was your footprint right there, your baseline, and then you added on to that. But they did it still, and they are still doing it with players that, with Indiana football, even though it's an overnight thing, it's not like they just went out with blank checks and signed away every player from Alabama, right? And I think that we gravitate towards teams that we naturally assume are built year by year, piece by piece, and not bought. And while I have a ton of respect for the Dodgers, and while the Dodgers are fun to watch, and I'm watching that game last night, even if a baseball enthusiast that knows the nuance in and out more so than myself can correct me on this, the perception or the reality or the gut feeling, I think, amongst many fans in Indiana is that we don't like store-bought. We like wholesome, down-home, like Indiana value, work hard piece by piece. And the same is, look at Purdue. What do we love about Purdue being number one in college basketball? What we love about it is it's led by a trio of players that are from right here in Indiana that went to Purdue, that committed to Purdue, that have stuck by Purdue, and have been loyal to Purdue. And we appreciate that. And that's the value, to a great extent, of what we want from our teams and our franchises here. Whether you're talking about Purdue basketball, Indiana football, the Pacers, the Colts, any of them. And I think to an extent why we naturally, if you are an Indianapolis fan listening to my voice with no rooting interest, unless you are intrigued by the history and the clean look of the Dodger uniforms in Chavez Ravine, and unless you are somebody who, as a young kid, fell in love with the Yankees because you saw those pinstripes and the interlocking NY that is so famous, you naturally probably, as a Cub fan or a Red fan or even a Cardinals fan, you gravitate towards those teams as much as possible in baseball that are built from pillars. Which leads us to what I saw last night and what made me think about it. During the NBA Finals, going into it, and I've made no bones about this fact in the NBA Finals last year, I went on this radio station and said, listen, I am supposed to be a professional. I'm supposed to be journalistically have integrity about me. I'm supposed to not have bias. I'm supposed to be able to objectively opine, not as a fan, but as a broadcaster. I owe it to the people that listen to this show to know that when I'm saying something, I'm saying it not because I have a lean one way or the other, but because that's what I'm observing, and then I throw it out there, and then people can react on either side of it. That should be, by definition, the job that I do. But the reality is, when you are a sports host, a little bit different, and we're in a different era where fandom can come out. Not forced, but naturally come out. And I loved the Pacers finals run because it allowed, for the first time for me in the 20-plus years that I've been fortunate and blessed enough to be a sports commentator in my hometown, it gave me finally this independence, this freedom, and this release of, you know what, I'm going to be a fan. And I don't think anybody in this town is going to hold it against me because everybody was so captivated by what the Pacers were doing. But it was deeper than that. It was deeper than simply being able to say, I simply want now to be shed of this burden of objectivity. I want to be able to paint my face and wear a T-shirt that says, why not Indiana? And wear my Pacers shirts to the games and sit and cheer as loud as can be and love it and soak it in. I wanted to be able to do those things. But it was deeper than that. It was an appreciation and an understanding of who all of us are as a people. And who all of us are as a people, I think, in Indianapolis. We all have our differences. You know, if you go to Ben Davis, you don't necessarily like people that went to Carmel. If you go to Cathedral, you rival the people that went to Chittard. If you go to Cecina, you rivals people that went to Roncalli. If you're from Zionsville, you want to beat Noblesville. If you're from Beech Grove, you want to beat Franklin Central. We all have that, right? But we also all have, I'd like to think, this understanding that being from Indianapolis and being from Indiana, when we root for our sports teams, the two things we want is we want them to have the same fundamental value that we do, and we want them to have the same almost chip on our shoulder of understanding of inferiority complex of we are as good as Chicago. We are, and we got that with that Pacers run. And we loved it because it was a team that individually were players that had been cast off elsewhere. I talked about it a lot during the finals. Tyrese Halliburton, who thought Sacramento was going to build around him, and then turns around one day and Sacramento immediately dispatches him. Aaron Nesmith, who gets drafted in Boston and is a lottery pick and can't get off the bench, and Boston turns around and looks the other way. et cetera, et cetera. And we love the fact that those guys collectively came together and said, it's not about my own personal redemption story. It's about the fact that we all play on the same team where collectively we can come together and we are Indiana. And we have the foundation of what is Indiana. And so therefore, I can't tell you what it meant to me and what I think it's going to mean to all of you to hear this. Reggie Miller is the player that we fell in love with in this town. Reggie Miller is the player that we put up a mural of on the side of Market Square Arena. Reggie Miller is the guy that we put his jersey or his number and his name up in the rafters at Gainbridge Fieldhouse because he took on the challenge of staring down New York and staring down, Orlando or Atlanta or whoever it was as a representative of Indiana, of we are proud to be from Indiana. It's been a long time since, from a pro sports standpoint, we were able to say as a fan base, we're proud to be from Indiana. And if you don't like it, then that's your problem because we ain't going away. And we loved it. We loved everything about it. And now we're bigger people, and we got big boy pants and big girl pants that we pull up because we're hosting Super Bowls and having all these events. But we've never totally lost sight of that inferiority complex that drives who we are. And so when Reggie Miller, as I talked about, after the Pacers lost the NBA Finals, and I said, instead of being upset about what we were denied, let's embrace what we were afforded. And what we were afforded and what we were embraced was the face of this franchise, the face of this city, rallying around and putting his arms around everybody and saying, I am one of you. I put away my Superman outfit to dress like Clark Kent and sit on the sidelines and wear my Mark Jackson jersey and wear my, I think Ron Artest jersey at one point and sit here and be a fan and just be a fan and absorb it and show that, yes, in fact, I've gone on to be television TNT Reggie Miller, but I'm still an Indiana Pacer. And so with this Netflix documentary that's coming out that follows around Tyrese Halliburton, that followed him throughout the course of the playoffs, I was a little lukewarm on it. Do I really want to watch and relive all of that? I don't know that I do. But then, as I was hedging back and forth on it and trying to find a reason why I could be captivated by it on this year that's going to be disappointing and frustrating and just this mixed range of emotions because Halliburton's not out there, but then again, maybe it's not disappointing or frustrating because I can see the foundation of what's there that we can go back to and chase that high again. Then I see this promotional video that comes out of Reggie Miller talking about Tyrese Halliburton and talking about Tyrese Halliburton going out in Game 6 with the calf strain, going into Game 7 with the calf strain, knowing what stands there for the Achilles, and what Reggie Miller, the first guy to be able to push out his chest and say, I want to make the letters that spell out Indiana even bigger on my chest because I'm that proud to be a Hoosier. For Reggie Miller to say the following about Tyrese Halliburton and the observation of Halliburton in Games 6 and Games 7 was what made me think to myself, that's what it means to be a Hoosier. Here is Reggie Miller in the Netflix documentary regarding Tyrese Halliburton.
Look at Game 6. In Game 7 of the NBA Finals, there will never, ever be a question of a guy's heart, will, determination, his game. No one will ever second guess any decision that he ever makes again. He risked it all. He risked it all for a franchise, for a state, for an organization. How many guys in life, how many women in life are willing to risk it all? Risk it all. But this comes back full circle moment to what's it like to be a Hoosier and to play in Indiana. I'm not playing for myself. I'm playing for that dude. Playing for that dude. I'm playing for these people. That's what it's like to be an Indiana Pacers. So thank you, Tyrese.
See, I love it. That's exactly right. I love it. I don't know. I've never covered the Miami Heat. I've never covered the LA Lakers. I've never covered the Chicago Bulls. I've never covered the New York Knicks. I've never covered the Philadelphia Eagles. I've never covered the LA Dodgers. I've never covered the Miami Dolphins. But what I know is this. I've covered the teams here, and that's what I love about it. Reggie Miller saying, this is about more when you are a Pacer than being a Pacer or being Tyrese Halliburton. It's about representing this state in this city, which I love with every single fiber of my body. And that's why that quote is exactly why we love Reggie Miller and exactly why we love Tyrese Halliburton. And that same quote about the representation, the pride of where you're from. And it doesn't have to be Indiana University. It could be Purdue. It could be Notre Dame. It could be Butler, whatever it might be. Gordon Hayward comes back to Butler, right? There's a reason for that. It's because we stand true to and loyal to the people of who we are that have that same pillar. And that's why Indiana football is such a great story, because it means that there is a pride and a push out of the chest for those that are able to say that they too are part of that family. And one of those guys is going to join me next, Chris Ditto, to talk about what Indiana's doing as a top 5 program right now in all of college football. Ralph Reef at 1 o'clock today. Loaded show for you over the course of today. We're going to talk Marion football at 1:30. Coach Karras is going to join us, Joel A. Erickson, to get us up on the Colts in the 2 o'clock hour on this Hump Day Wednesday. Chris Ditto next. Query and Company on the Fan. So that fight song is what you hear when the third-ranked team in all of college football takes to the field. It is the highest ranking in school history in the AP poll for Indiana after their massive win, obviously, over Oregon on the road. More on the national perspective of that coming up later in the show, but I wanted to talk to a guy that I think actually just about an hour ago was able to get the red and white face paint off. He is a guy that played 4 years of football for Indiana, throwing for over 3,100 yards for the Hoosiers, and I know is hyped up about the great start they've gotten off to, talking about former quarterback Chris Ditto. Chris, how are you? Do we have Chris Corbin? Chris, you there?
Yeah, Jake, can you hear me?
There we go, yeah. All right, so here's the thing, man. You've got to be completely pumped up about this, and so I want to begin simply with this. What is it? What is it about this team, when you look at it, that jumps out at you where you say, that's why they're winning and that's what makes them different? Is there any one thing you can point towards?
You know, that's a great question, and I think that's a question Indiana fans have been asking themselves really the last year and a half, probably since for me, the UCLA game from last year when we went out there and took it to them when I think we still didn't know what we had, and we beat them soundly, and then we went through the season, started 10-0, obviously played Ohio State and struggled, then beat Purdue, played Notre Dame and struggled. So that last year was still, a complete euphoria for every Indiana fan and Indiana football fan out there. And then we get to this season and you go through the first 3 games expected to win, you win them. You start the Big Ten season against Illinois, who nobody thinks we're going to win outside of, the people in Bloomington are diehard Indiana football fans, and we just blow their doors off. We beat Iowa, in a very tough physical game. And then so we've got a 1,000-pound gorilla staring at us in Oregon, and I'm still waiting for that ball to drop, and it just
Right.
it hasn't. And I've watched the Oregon game, and they do everything right, and they're so locked in from the special teams to the defense to the offense. I mean, for us to be able to run in our kickoff specialist and absolutely drill a 58-yard field goal that looked good from 80 in 24 seconds in a 2-minute drill and execute it perfectly. I mean, it obviously starts with Coach Signetti and the culture that he has just permeated through that entire program and town and players. And it's just, there's so many things I think you can point to, and they just all add up to a team that executes, and if they make a mistake, they don't blink, they don't care, they just move on to the next one. And a perfect example is the pick six that Mendoza threw. They came right back down the field. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but it's so exciting, and it's so unbelievable now, where it feels like I think we got some respect last year, but I think now it's more so people are, the Kirk Herbstreits of the world, even Nick Saban. I'm real curious to see what he says this week on game day about us. But it's just, you can't argue with the success now and being 6-0 and winning at Oregon.
Chris, to me, Chris Ditto is our guest. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. When you look at this season, and we don't know where it goes from here, right? But let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that Indiana, holds serve. I mean, they just overcame a massive challenge on the road. I think it is possible, and I want you to tell me, as somebody who has played in the Big Ten, whether there's any accuracy to this. I think it's possible we may look back, if this becomes a special year, and say that a real, not turning point for them, but important part for them was the win at Iowa. Because you go into Iowa, that's a tough place to play. They're always well coached, and yet that game was, they were going to lose that game. They snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. And the resolve that was shown in that environment, that to me was kind of the wake-up call that other Indiana teams would not have won. What say you?
Yeah, I agree 100%, and was talking to friends about that particular game. And how many times in the last 20, 25 years have we watched Indiana play a 3 to 3.5 quarter game against a really good opponent, where it's either on the road or even at Bloomington, and it comes down to, okay, we've got to make a field goal, and then we miss it, and then we turn around on defense and we give up a 60-yard touchdown to lose the game. Where that scenario is exactly flipped, and it's us losing the game, where Coach Cignetti has created this resolve where, again, I think when you play that well and you are so locked in, those mistakes just kind of fall your way. Just like last year, everything that we needed to go right for us went our way, it seemed. This year, the Iowa game, Indiana doesn't win that game in the last, even 2 years ago when it was Coach Allen, before that when it was Coach Wilson. Those types of games, we would play well for 3.5 quarters and then figure out a way to lose a game. That one, we're like, oh my gosh, we just looked Iowa straight in the eye, won in Iowa City, which we all know is a very, very difficult place to play. They, as many times as they blitz, as many times as Mendoza got hit right as he was throwing the ball, and the touchdown pass, he got hit right as he was throwing it. He put it right where it needed to be, and Surratt did the rest. So I think that's a great point where now we will all expect them to go and win those types of games. And we've got two home games coming up: Michigan State, UCLA, and then Maryland's not going to be an easy game. Penn State, that's going to be crazy. There's a group of my friends and I were going to Happy Valley for that game. So, and I'm sure you know this, the athletic director at Penn State played football at Indiana. He's a friend of mine. So it's in the whole Kurt Cignetti ties to Pennsylvania. So there's so many storylines, and I know you talked about it this week, and it's just so exciting to see Indiana football to be the center of the college football universe right now, because it really is it not?
No, they're the biggest story in college football right now, nationwide, right? No question. Now, so Chris, let me ask you this: Kurt Cignetti, I mean, obviously, we can go into his confidence, his bravado, etc. But when you look at this team and the way that they played this year, if you had to pinpoint which of the two things would you say is more accurate about Indiana? A, they are coached in such a way that they know exactly where to be at all times, kind of like a Brad Stevens Butler basketball team where they just know where the loose ball's going? Or is it B, that this team has more individual with each player's speed than we've seen in the past, and thus, as a result, they're able to fly to places before the opposition? Like, for example, with Oregon, they out-Oregon with their speed. Is it, in fact, preparation, or is it a different level of athleticism that is different with Indiana?
That's a great question, and I would have to, in my opinion, I think, and that's why I think it will sustain itself, because I think Coach Cignetti on down from our offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and through the position coaches, they have that team so well prepared. They scout so well. They appear to have a game plan that is ready for each individual team that they play. And while we have great athletes, and we've got obviously what looks like take Surratt, for example. I don't think he's a first-round draft choice wide receiver. He's probably maybe a third, fourth, fifth rounder. He's not the fastest guy on the field, but he runs probably, you could argue, runs the best routes in the country, because I know his nickname is Waffle House, and it's true. Every time you watch him run a route, he gets open, and Mendoza knows where to put it, just like Rourke did last year. Take Aiden Fisher. He's not going to wow you at the combine, but the guy, and all three of those linebackers, from Elijah to I can't think of the other two fellas' names, but all three of our linebackers, they are always in the right place at the right time, and they make tackles fundamentally. Our secondary is in the right place at the right time. Defensive line, they seem to be, first play of the game against Oregon, bam, sack. That was just a four guys rushing. They kind of set the tone right there. We didn't rush, we didn't blitz anybody. 4 guys got to the quarterback, sack. So, in my opinion, which I think will give us a longer upside, and this will sustain itself longer, is being more prepared, because you're going to have great athletes come and go. Like Fernando Mendoza, he could be the number 1 pick. He probably will be a top 5 pick at worst. that guy's a bit of a unicorn. He's going to be tough to replace next year, although his brother looks pretty darn good too. So while if you can sprinkle in some of those first rounders and have a boatload of just nasty, tough-nosed Aiden Fishers, college football players that love playing football, always in the right place at the right time, coached up, very coachable leaders. And, I mean, they've flipped Indiana football into culture, what seems to be overnight. And we're lucky. I just feel so lucky to be able to continue to be on this ride and hope it continues and we keep all the vultures of other schools away.
You know, defensively, you're right. Aiden Fisher has been a core there, right? But like Isaiah Jones, Kellen Wyatt, Hardy, more. I mean, they got a lot of guys that are making plays for them, right? Chris, I'm curious of this, and I want our listeners to get an idea or a feel for what this means. And I'm going to lead the witness here with a presumptive answer. You may not go with the answer I'm thinking here. But 10 years ago, hypothetically, you're getting on an airplane. You're strapping in, guy sitting next to you. He goes, "Oh, you're a bigger guy." You go, "Yeah. I played football." "Oh, really? Where'd you play?" "Played at Indiana." You know, at that time, there was a different – you're a Division I college football player. It's pretty cool, right? And then you're like, Indiana. I'm not saying it had no disrespect to our era, right?
Right.
But is there a different oomph now? Do you push your chest out a little more, and do your other teammates push the chest out a little more of, you know what, damn straight, I played at Indiana? You know what I mean?
It's such a funny question and ironic question because I'm in Georgia right now, down here for a little bit of work and playing a little bit of golf. And I've come to Georgia once or twice a year for the last 10 years, and I would never wear IU stuff. Maybe a hat, especially in the fall, because we all know it's Georgia, it's SEC country. But everywhere I go down here, I have something IU on right now, and every person, or in just about every restaurant or if we're out, people will comment, "Oh my gosh, Indiana, you guys are good. You guys are good. You guys are for real." So yes, absolutely. I am 100% so proud of what the program is doing. No, don't get me wrong. 10 years ago, I still loved Indiana football. We've had season tickets since 1996. We've been going to the games. Sometimes we stay out in the tailgates and we don't go into the game. Now, 10 years ago, we couldn't give away tickets. People would stay on the tailgate. Now, as you know, and we'll see, sold out games. People are begging for tickets. So yes, I think you'll see more and more colors, Indiana being worn, and being in Georgia, especially where we all know, what the Georgia Bulldogs do, what Alabama does, what the SEC is like. They know it. They love and they know Curt Cignetti. And 2 years ago, we would not have been on anyone's radar or map. So the only other problem is if I'm 10 years ago, I'm getting in the plane and somebody's like, "Wow, you're a big guy." They say, "Well, did you play tackle or tight end?" And I have to, unfortunately, put my head down and say, "I actually played quarterback." So, yeah.
Hey, come on, we're not 30 anymore, right? I mean, let's be real.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay, lastly, Chris, Curt Cignetti, is he long-term in Indiana?
I think so. I mean, I do. I believe it. And if you go back and, I've been fortunate. I met him this year. I met his wife. They seem like they are in love with Bloomington. Mrs. Cignetti seemed over the moon about the city of Bloomington, the town, how they've embraced her, how they've embraced him. I think we could lose a defensive or our coordinators possibly this offseason, but man, they seem like they're so gelled together as a staff that it's going to take I think a special opportunity for a coordinator to leave. But in my heart of hearts, I believe Coach Cignetti is going to remain in Bloomington for the next, as long as he wants to. Hopefully it's 10 years, and then he's got a protege that he wants to give the job to, and we're building the statue, and we're adding on 20,000 seats, and the rest is history. And we've got, and we are one of those football powers with the new NIL. And I know you've talked about this. You've got to give Scott Dolson a ton of credit for finding Curt Cignetti and then giving him the resources to run a program that can succeed at a top 10 or top 5 level. And it's looking like we're going to be potentially hosting a playoff game. Could you imagine Alabama, Georgia coming to Bloomington
I
in
know.
December.
Right now, I think
Or
it's slot. The
or
last
Notre Dame.
projection I saw was Georgia. You let those Bulldog fans know. Give them a map. Give them a map to Bloomington.
It's so funny. So down here in Georgia, I've got some friends. They love Georgia football, and they're like, "Oh man, I don't go to football games if it's less than 50 degrees. I mean, I just don't know what that would be like."
Well,
I'm not kidding.
I know. Get them some gloves, man. Get them some gloves. But a lot to be done between now and then. Chris, we'll let you get back to the golf. I appreciate the time. We'll talk to you again over the course of the season and see what happens, of course, this Saturday.
Love to. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Love you. Thanks for talking IU football.
Appreciate it. Chris Ditto joining us on the program. We'll take a quick recess and come back. And I want to piggyback off of something he said about Kurt Signetti. And then, as I mentioned, Ralph Reif coming up, as well as Coach Karras from Marion. Still Joel A. Erickson as well. A lot to unpack here. Hump Day Wednesday on the Fan. I almost feel like with Corbin running the commands while Eddie Garrison is on vacation. And yesterday we found out that Corbin Lingenfelter is a fan of like Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, that like Rat Pack style music. But then what did you say is your other music of choice, Corbin?
90s country.
See, I was going to say that I should just hand it over to you to educate me a little bit about 90s country. Although, I mean, I've got a decent idea of 90s country, but and just have you bounce back every segment with Corbin's music and see how long we can entertain the masses and then educate myself on 90s music, because I am the first to admit that I'm a 90s poser or a country poser when it comes to country music. And that's one of the things, by the way, that I was thinking about as Chris Ditto was talking about Kurt Signetti. When it comes to like confidence and bravado and aura from a coaching standpoint, it's difficult. That's one of those things that you can't imposter. I think players can sniff out fake confidence, and they can sniff out fake tough guy. And it just doesn't work unless it's legitimate and rooted in authenticity. And I think you get that with Signetti. I just think the way he comes off, the bravado he has, it's, at first when he came to Indiana, I think it was just almost like, is this like an SNL skit? But then I think players figured out what he's asking and telling me to do is working, and we're winning. And I'm going to buy into this guy. I'm buying what he's selling, and it's worked. And there is a little bit of me that wonders, like, once there might be like some sort of an unveil of that, does it then completely crumble? But I don't think so. I think it's long haul stuff. I do. I really do. Speaking of long haul stuff, one of the long haul greats is back. I'll let you know about that. And there was an interesting perspective new pacer that we have answer on. I'll tell you about both next. We'll get some of that news just in terms of overall some of the injuries that we're seeing around the NFL with Ralph Reif. Going to join us just about 10 minutes from now. If you're just joining the program, my name is Jake Query, Corbin Lingenfelter filling in for Eddie Garrison. We call this show Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. The Colts have a new quarterback, not necessarily in terms of one that you're going to see under center, but Brett Rippon is now their number 3 quarterback. Now, the nephew to Mark Rippon, who was most recently a Cincinnati Bengal, was decided upon by the Colts after they worked out 4 different quarterbacks yesterday. Riley Leonard will stay move up, I should say, into the spot now as the backup. And so Leonard will be the backup to Daniel Jones. Rippon will be the emergency or number 3 quarterback. Anthony Richardson went on IR. That means minimum 4 games missed for Anthony Richardson. So there is that going on with the Colts. We'll talk to Joel A. Erickson coming up 2 o'clock hour of the show today. Also, the Pacers, it's interesting because I was walking into the game against San Antonio on Monday night, and as I was walking across Delaware, crossing the Delaware, if you will, I was pulling a George Washington, crossing the Delaware, and guy walks up to me and says, "Hey, Jake, what are you hearing in regards to," and he throws a player out to me, and I'm like, "Wait, what?" I've not heard, and frankly, I don't know that I even realized said player was available as a free agent. But nonetheless, he says, "What are you hearing about Russell Westbrook?" And rumors that the Pacers might kick the tires there just because of the fact that they, obviously Cameron Payne coming in. I don't know that I would list Westbrook as a point guard, but, a guy that is a combo player that could have been somebody to facilitate a couple of voids for Indiana. Don't need to worry about any of it because he is now a member of the Sacramento Kings. So Russell Westbrook signing with Sacramento. That news coming out today. Here's the biggest news of the day before we bring in Ralph Reif. Corbin, I would like to know your favorite Pop-Tart.
The sugar cookie one that they come out of Christmas time.
Okay. So, and I didn't know this. Kellanova is the company that makes Pop-Tarts. I just assumed Pop-Tarts were made by Kellogg's. Maybe this is like an auxiliary thereof. I don't know. They announced today, and I did not realize that this one's been gone for a while. The chocolate chip cookie dough Pop-Tart is returning. Okay? Do we have the breaking news sounder by chance? This just in, Kellanova, the company behind the Pop-Tarts, announcing that chocolate chip cookie dough Pop-Tarts are returning to shelves coming up here in a couple of weeks. They have not been seen since 2022. These are like the Shamrock Shakes, the McRibs of Pop-Tarts, it would appear. Now, I'm curious of this, though, and maybe Ralph Reif, when we have him on, can expand upon whether or not, and I'm not asking him to endorse, not endorse, whatever else. I don't want to put him in a bad position here. But Pop-Tarts now, I don't know the nutritional value of Pop-Tarts. I know that the box says that they got all kinds of vitamins and stuff like that in them, but they're probably like Flintstone vitamins. Are they really packed with vitamins, right? And they've gotten a little bit creative in some of their flavoring. They've done these crossovers with cereals, like there's an Applejack Pop-Tart now. And I like Apple Jacks, and I like Pop-Tarts. I don't necessarily like the Applejack Pop-Tart, right? But they now are making Pop-Tarts Protein. Now, Corbin, you're making a face right now like you're not down with the Pop-Tarts Protein.
I like protein pancakes, but when I'm eating a Pop-Tart, the last thing I'm thinking about is how nutritional and how protein-packed.
I think you're just, you're already kind of making the punt, aren't you, at that point? Now, here, let me give you the flavors for the Pop-Tart Protein. Slammin' Strawberry. That's the classic tart strawberry. I'm reading this from WTHR, by the way. The classic tart strawberry filling with frosting and rainbow sprinkles, but apparently with a little bit more protein. I don't know. Boostin' Brown Sugar Cinnamon. Again, the gooey brown sugar cinnamon and a golden brown coat. Okay? and bumpin' blueberry. So now all they've done is they're not just adding protein, they're adding adjectives. Because the brown sugar and cinnamon is now the boostin' brown sugar and cinnamon with the protein mix. The blueberry, the bumpin' blueberry, and then strawberry is the slammin' strawberry. I think I mentioned earlier, and I was stunned by the number of people that disagreed with me on this. I thought I was the commonplace here when I mentioned a while ago, the last time that we talked Pop-Tarts on the program, that I eat them without toasting them. And I thought that was the norm. Like when I'm on the road and I go to a gas station or whatever else and I need a snack, I grab the Pop-Tarts and I break off the side. I eat that first and then I just go with it without toasting it. I don't know that two things about me that are probably unique. Number one, I don't know that, and I've said this before, I know this for a fact, I've never cooked a meal. I've never sat down and cooked a meal. But number two, I've never toasted a Pop-Tart. I just assumed that they were I thought the toasting part was a myth. I didn't know that people actually do that. But now when you do so, and I don't know, is protein toastable? Protein powder, can you toast protein powder with the new protein Pop-Tarts? See, these are the things that keep me awake at night at 3:48 in the morning when I'm staring at the ceiling and I think about them. Also, I think about different injuries that are taking place in sports, and I think to myself, who would know the answer as to the timetable on that, which is why we go to the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, where we find Ralph Reef. RalphReef.com is the website for Reef Executive Performance Solutions, a man that is synonymous with athletic training and has been kind enough to lend us his expertise from time to time on this program. Ralph, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing very well, Jake. And Pop-Tarts, I would estimate that across the NCAA Division I athletic departments nutrition stations, I would say that 9 out of 10 have Pop-Tarts available.
Really? So is it?
Yeah.
So the protein Pop-Tarts, is this legit?
Well, protein, if they're boosting the protein, typical Pop-Tarts, if I went to the store right now and bought them, they'd probably have about 4 or 5 grams of protein. But in sports nutrition, dietitians really like them for the pre-activity carbohydrate load. Very high in carbohydrates. Okay,
fair enough. Now let me ask you, Ralph, does that mean necessarily that when I'm laying around in some rainy 35-degree spitting cold rain in late November college football Saturday and I eat 6 Pop-Tarts, that's not necessarily the carbohydrate boost I need in that moment, right?
No, that would be contraindicated. Yeah, you'd be better off getting a tin of Spam. And
well, we know that that's also versatile, right?
Very much so.
Different ways in which I can enjoy it. Okay, I want to begin with this, Ralph. The situation with, and again, I want to make very clear, I'll say it for Ralph on his behalf here. Some of the injuries we're talking about, Ralph is not the trainer specifically dealing with said player or injury, but more of an overview. And when I look at Shavarius Mooney Ward, is his nickname, with the Colts, and the fact that he had this freak incident that took place where he got a concussion in the pregame against Arizona, Ralph, but he's coming off of another recent concussion, then I became curious. When you have a concussion, is there a window of time in which you might be more susceptible to one than you otherwise would be?
Great question, and a standard in sports medicine amongst the providers is that there's no better prediction for injury than previous injury. And so someone who's had a sprained ankle is more susceptible to another sprained ankle. Same thing with concussion and mild traumatic brain injury, as it's referred to more commonly today. But those concussions, the accumulation effect is very, very concerning with in today's medical environment. So, yes, there is a cumulative effect that has to be dealt with in the discussions with everybody involved, all the stakeholders.
Okay, and then with that, I guess the susceptibility is one thing. I guess the way to parlay that, Ralph, my question would be this, and that is, and maybe it's different person to person. Are concussions the kind of injury that can compound? In other words, if you have had one in the past, is it possible that player A with let's say what would be considered, and I'm not saying any brain injury is minor, okay, but a mild concussion, could that be a more severe concern for someone, even if it's been a long time since they've had one before, than somebody that, by all account, it is their first experience with it?
Well, you hit a key point, Jake, and where this becomes somewhat complex is the amount of time between concussions. And so with this player, he had a concussion that was on the injury report and I believe missed game number 2, week 2, after concussion reported in game 1. And so what's that been, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
5 weeks ago?
I think 5,
and
yeah.
So we're looking at a same season, same half of the season. There's the standards that we go by in the medical field for concussions is really set by a global concussion consensus panel. The last one was done in 2023. It's referred to as the Amsterdam Consensus, and had about 50 people who are involved in that program. It takes 3 to 5 years to pull all the information together. That's why they're not annual consensus reports. And in that consensus report on the management of concussions is where the NFL protocol came from. So this 5-step NFL protocol came out of the Amsterdam Consensus Convention in 2023. In that consensus statement, there was no mention of recurrent or a time frame of aggregate kind of symptoms, or are you more susceptible 1 month, 2 months, 12 months post initial concussion? So that has not been addressed because this is an extremely difficult injury to diagnose and predict. And so what is the standard, and I'm sure what they are doing within the Colts organization is that they are very much front and center. A priority is the fact that, hey, 5 weeks ago, this gentleman had a concussion, diagnosed with it. I have no idea of what his symptoms were, right? But he went through the protocol fairly quickly to return in a very short period of time. But that in itself is not a predictor of this time. And that goes to your question. So, and when you have these close together, this is where I refer to them as the stakeholders. The athlete has a voice in this, the independent neuropsychologist, everybody in between has a sort of comment to be made relative to this. This is, it's hard to measure. And because it's not like a fracture of a finger where you look at the x-ray and in 3 weeks we x-ray it again and the fracture is healing, and we know that. We don't know how to do that with brain injury.
Ralph Reif is my guest. He is on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. We're talking about some of the injuries, including right now concussions within the NFL in general. Ralph, if you were to pick, and maybe concussions is the answer here, okay? If you were to take, say, 100 athletes, all of which have been diagnosed with the same injury of one another, which injury is the one that would be the most complex and could have the greatest variety amongst the 100 different athletes in terms of recovery time, treatment process, etc.? Is there a specific injury that is the hardest to blanket statement?
Well, Jake, that's a great question, and there are a couple that fall into that category. And these injuries fall into the category because they are difficult to diagnose, meaning imagery doesn't show you exactly what's going on. You have to rely upon the injured person's feedback on how something feels or how they test on a particular test. And so, yes, concussion is very high in the really tough to diagnose and to give a timetable to. High ankle sprains is another one. Fools us all the time. Is it a injury to the inside of the ankle, the big deltoid ligament? Is it an injury to the outside? Is it just a bad lateral ankle sprain? High ankle sprains are tough to diagnose because it takes a little while for it to reveal itself. So the initial pain, the initial swelling might be truly right around the ankle bones, but then as maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 days go past, now the pain is higher into the lower leg, and so those are really hard. Another one that's not mainstream by any reasons, but it's thoracic outlet syndrome, and this is where somebody might complain of neck pain. My shoulder hurts all the time, the back of my shoulder. Sometimes my elbow feels like it's numb, and this happens in sport a lot, particularly contact, hockey, rugby, football, where you have the point of contact on the shoulder and the side of the neck. And sometimes we get fooled by this. Thoracic outlet syndrome happens in tennis, happens in swimming, and unless you are an experienced practitioner, these things are missed all the time.
Is there an injury, Ralph, that has the most uniform treatment? In other words, when you see it, you go, yep, I'm pretty certain the time frame is this. I'm pretty sure we need to do this because this one seems to, I've seen it 100 times, and it seems to have the most consistency from one patient to the next.
Yeah, I'll take a lateral ankle sprain every day. I mean, there's 3 ligaments on the side of the ankle. You get an x-ray, make sure you don't have a fracture, and you just the protocol, you just go. And what I love about them, you can treat those things 24 hours a day. You can milk the fluid out of the ankle. You can get their range of motion back. They're very predictable. They're very easy to diagnose, and they respond to all the tricks of the trade. And so I'd take a lateral ankle sprain all day, every day.
And as we know from my own medical expertise on this show, Ralph, I've mentioned before, we all have 4 ankles, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that right? There's one on each side, on each foot. I realize there's 2. Okay. Anthony Richardson, Ralph Reef is my guest, Java House Peel and Port guest line. Anthony Richardson in a freak accident. What we know is that it's listed as an orbital fracture. Now, Ralph, I'm smart enough to know this, and that is that you have the orbital bone around your eye, okay? But when I look at it, and feel free, I hate to say it this way, I can look at a skull and realize how it works, right? But in my case, I have a very large bone on my forehead above my eye. I then have, obviously, the bone that goes just below it. Does orbital mean any area of that, or is it specific to meaning top and or bottom?
Yeah, think of it this way, that it's a circle, and the orbital bone is that complete circle.
Okay.
All right?
So it can be anywhere on there.
Yes, it can be anywhere on there. And then within that, there is the floor of the eye socket that there's a bone there as well. And I have a lot of questions about this particular injury, not because of the player and so forth, but the mechanism of injury, being a snapback from some type of stretching cord, and I don't know if it had a handle on it, if it didn't have a handle, if it snapped or if it slipped out of his hands or off of his foot, or there's a lot of questions there. And then where did it hit? Did it hit directly to the bone and create a true fracture? And there's the ophthalmic blood flow, or ophthalmic artery that, when somebody gets a boxer gets punched in the eye and they come out and they're just cruelly swollen big time. That's the blood flow around it, the orbital artery or the ophthalmic artery is usually sheared off, and it just creates a lot of bleeding inside, and there's not a lot of space for it to go. And so that's one of the issues with an ophthalmic injury is there's just not a lot of space for fluid to sort of release itself, like a lateral ankle sprain. Fluid can go down to the toes, it can go all the way up into the calf, but there in the eye, it's sort of stuck within that cavity. And so a minor injury can become major symptoms of blurring of vision due to the fluid. There's just a lot of different scenarios with this, but for them to put him on a 4-week IR doesn't surprise me, just from a standpoint of management of that fracture, time to get the swelling down, but it shouldn't affect anything else. He should be able to go to meetings, should be able to drive, all of those kinds of life things. Just can't take a hit, and you need to stay somewhat upright. You don't want to lay flat all day long and allow the fluid to sit there. So movement is actually good for it.
So based on the precedent of other situations, there would be no reason to believe that this would impair beyond the time period of repair, that it would impact his vision, correct?
That would be my belief. Absolutely right. There should be no impairment to vision long term.
Okay. It is, Ralph, it's all of it's fascinating because, and I would imagine, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but even in your vast experience as a trainer, I mean, everything from organizing, the training for the Olympic Games to, all of the different things that you've done in the different universities you've worked with in NCAA and everything else, my guess would be, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that even to this day, there are things that pop up where you say to yourself, that actually is a new wrinkle that I had never seen before.
Absolutely. We're challenged with that all the time. And that it might be, let's take the high ankle sprain. We think it's a high ankle sprain. All of a sudden they have bleeding in their lower leg in that front compartment where you get shin splints. And that becomes an emergency situation because blood collects in that anterior compartment. And I'm sure there's listeners out there who know someone who's had anterior compartment surgery to relieve that fluid pressure in there. So, and TOS, thoracic outlet syndrome. 10 years ago, we didn't know what that was. and the medical community, we become a little smarter all the time, and we figure things out. And so, yeah, there are new wrinkles constantly. And you're sort of like pregame warm-up, right? Colts, let's go. Nothing wrong can happen here. And when I was working Butler Athletics football, we were out at Drake for a football game, and I actually got injured during pregame warm-up where an athlete ran backwards and ran right into my elbow and jammed my thumb against my hip, and I tore a ligament in my thumb. So crazy things happen, and that's an active space before a football game. And it's fortunate more things don't happen.
And, of course, sometimes they can happen when you least expect it. David Bell, the former Warren Central Purdue star, yesterday announcing his retirement, saying that he had an injury that blindsided him, that, he could not run further risk of it. So it is an ongoing thing with all athletes. Ralph, appreciate the time as always. I'll let you get back to your Pop-Tarts, all right?
Okay, you take care, Jake. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Ralph Reef joining us again on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. By the way, yesterday I had to do something. Well, I mean, I'll just say it. For whatever reason, I guess now this is controversial now. I don't know. But each year in the fall, I get a flu shot. And so I had to get 2 shots this year. And I got both of them in my arm, and I hate needles. And the lady said to me, hey, the one thing, because I said, how sore is my arm going to be? And she said, it can be pretty sore, but you want to make sure to drink plenty of electrolytes and keep yourself hydrated. So thank goodness from Java House, I had the Liquid Science. I did actually the Arctic Freeze and Orange, mixed it together. Fabulous. Mixed it in water. Had several of them yesterday, and I was stunned because today I got up and was like, wow, like I don't even really necessarily feel like had anything done yesterday. I don't know if those two are connected, but it certainly gave me a peace of mind. JavaHouse.com, by the way, Jake25 is the discount code for 25% off. All right, Marion football. Couple of guys being honored for Marion football, and their head coach will join us to talk about it next. Big one for Marion coming up this Saturday, 1:05 kick on the near west side, right off of Cold Springs, as it is St. Francis coming in after a huge game for Marion that got a couple of players honored for them against Taylor. We'll get to all of that with their head coach, who joins us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Ted Karras joining us. Coach, how are you?
Doing good, Jake. Good to be with you this Wednesday.
Hey, I'll tell you what, you guys, and I want to know, it's interesting because you go into this game against Taylor and you're coming off of really a rout, right, where you're one-sided, probably got a chance to get some different guys worked in. And then you go into that Taylor game and you want to talk about a shootout, essentially. What did you learn from your team in a game that had 77 total points and a couple of guys walking away from it with some league honors?
Well, on the league honors, great, a lot of great performances to get the win. Keegan LaBelle, 29 attempts, 236 yards rushing. 2 touchdowns. Great job. Offensive line did a great job. Isaiah Street on the other side, defensive Midwest player of the week, 15 tackles. He was all over the place. Rarely do you see a D lineman notch 15 tackles, so he did an excellent job. And we started off good up there, but we didn't have the killer instinct early on. It became a shootout. We went up 14-0. They have a top 10 scoring offense. They got us on some trick plays. So we got to have that killer instinct. We got to keep starting off strong. We got to keep running the football.
I thought you were pretty balanced offensively as well, right? Because, and I realized LaBelle was, the kid out of Mount Vernon was really good for you, but I thought Tristan Polk also gave you a little bit of balance offensively. Is that, was that kind of the way the game fell for you, or was it by design to have that balance?
It's sometimes it falls to you, sometimes it's by design, but he is really doing a good job, Tristan Polk. He's very efficient in the passing game. He's running effectively when he needs to. He's hitting the open receivers, and the running game, also helps us in the passing game. But no, Tristan's been having a heck of a year, really stepping up, a great leader for the team as well.
How are you different than last time we talked, just in terms of, when you look at your group, and I think the last time we talked to you was probably about a month ago. You were getting ready, I think, getting ready for Indiana Wesleyan, so you were learning a little more about your team at that point. But have you had to kind of make adjustments, or is it this is who we are and let's just continue to grow in that phase?
Well, for you to ask how we're different, well, we got some confidence. That was a big win to beat Indiana Wesleyan. Not too many teams in Indiana have beaten them over the past couple of years, so that was huge for a confidence level. But we always improvise and adapt, really on a daily basis. So, Coach Smith has had 7 different offensive lineups, due to some injuries, some guys getting dinged up. Defensively, we changed some things. So we improvise and adapt really on a daily basis.
And listen, offensively, Coach, is where you guys, that's the bell cow, at least from the outside of what it looks like, because Indiana Wesleyan, a top 10 game for you there, and you're going over 50 in that game, 58 against Madonna. Yep. We talked about 69 against Defiance. So clearly you can put points on the board. My point being, people that come out in a great environment, and it's going to be a great environment on Saturday, they're going to see some scoreboard lighting, right?
Yeah, man, our offense is clicking, man. Coach King and the staff are doing a really good job. The players are executing at a high level, and we got to continue doing that. We're scoring, about 46 points a game, which is outstanding. And yeah, we have an exciting offense to watch.
What jumps out at you about St. Francis?
Well, a couple things. I'm very familiar with their staff. As Coach Sherman, helped me build up Marion here on our first go around. They're fighters. They've been down in some games, but they've been fighting back every game, and they're 5-1 as well. So they're a very tough team. They got a really good quarterback. They pass the ball well. Opportunistic defense. It's going to be a fight, a 3-hour fight, which we preach, all the time to the guys. You got to go hard for 3 hours on that Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, and that's what we have to do on the west side to win this Saturday.
Coach, I want to talk to you about Coach Karras from Marion is our guest here on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. I want to go back to Isaiah Street and kind of what this symbolizes to an extent, because one of the things that I love about Marion, and I've talked a lot about this, here's a kid that's from not far away from campus, right, from Brownsburg, went away to Western Michigan, and then comes back. And so when you have the opportunity for players that went elsewhere maybe didn't get the reps they wanted. Maybe there were changes, things just didn't work out for them, and then they get a chance to come back home. What is the challenge from a coaching standpoint of taking a guy that has been elsewhere and gone through adversity and then coming back and having them refocus and rechannel into, but this is what we need from you at Marion from a team standpoint and then also from an individual standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's been pretty organic with each and every one of the transfers that have done that, and then we started off, back in the day, Jeremy Finch was one of our first ones.
Yep.
That is at two different big schools, and he came here. He had a nice 2011 for us back in the day. But I think it's on an individual basis. They went out, they wanted the D1 experience. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But we got a really good experience here on the West Side, play some good football, get a great education, win football games, and compete for titles. So that's something that usually motivates a lot of these guys to come back.
I love it, man. Like you say that, and I'm just in you saying that, I'm 53 years old. I have no eligibility. Well, I probably do have eligibility left, but it kind of gets me pumped up. You know what I mean? You just have an energy about you, right? You just have that energy about you that I can hear it when I talk to you in terms of what it means for you. And you're another one that's come back to Marion, right? In terms of second stint here. The program is different now than how it was before for you. In what way?
Well, before we'd never won a title, so we were always, reaching for that goal. And then once we got it, now it's every year the goal is to get another title. And, Marion has another one after I left in 15, and we are going to honor the 2015 national champs and their 10-year anniversary for this game. But it's just, the expectation is that. So, we embrace that, and we work towards it every day.
It is homecoming. It is a 105 kick. It is University of St. Francis, and Marion finds themselves now ranked 11th. St. Francis comes in at 24th, so it is going to be a tilt. And then Olivet Nazarene right after that, which is also a big one as well. So, that's going to be on the road. So I guess you got to go one game at a time, but it's a big one coming up on Saturday, Coach. Certainly wish you the best of luck with it.
Well, thank you, Jake. We appreciate it. It's going to be a freak show on the West Side for sure.
I love it, man. That's the freak show on the West Side. I love it. Big time scoring. And again, an offense that is clicking on all cylinders. We talked about it. They're balanced. They can run. They can throw. And St. Francis going to be a challenge as well. Then Olivet Nazarene, and then St. Francis Judson and St. X of Illinois to round out the schedule before the NAIA playoffs for the Marion Knights. I want to get back into something. Speaking of college football, I'm sitting there and I'm scanning last night, late, watched a TV show, a streaming show that I'm curious if I think I'm the only one watching it. And it got done and I'm sitting there scrolling through my phone, reading stuff, and boom, I hear somebody talking who I like, and he's talking about something that catches my ear, and I say to myself, it's still surreal to me that this is a national topic of conversation that's happening right here in our backyard. And it was 3:48 last night during a bout of insomnia when I discovered it, but I'm going to share it with you next. necessarily my immediate wheelhouse, but let me hear a little bit more of this. I realize there's like probably some YouTube violation or something here, but let me hear a little more of this here. Well, I can't hear the fella singing. I'm going to go with, how old is this guy?
He's probably in his late 40s, early 50s now.
And this is from when, that song?
Around 95?
I'll go with Keith Urban. Is this a mainstream artist?
He had like one really good song, but other than that, nothing really.
Initials, please.
CA. He has a bar downtown.
Here?
Here. Right off of Meridian.
Go ahead and hit me with it.
It is Clayton Anderson.
Oh, well, I mean, I should have known that. That's JMV's buddy.
Yeah.
I thought that was, when you were playing that, I just assumed you were going with, yeah, I know. I mean, hell, I should have known that. Clayton Anderson's a great dude, and he's got not just the one down there, but he's going to do the same, I think, in Broderpool, and plays a ton of different things and is obviously on with JMV all the time. So I apologize to Clayton Anderson that I did not know that was him right there, although I only heard like 3 seconds of the song, for what it's worth. But really good dude from right here in Central Indiana. All right. So yesterday I'm sitting there, I'm scrolling through, and I stumble upon and I've always kind of liked RG3. You know, I don't know, as a player, I thought, and it's interesting because I remember when he entered into the NFL along with Andrew Luck, and there was a lot of discussion between the two as to which one was the rookie of the year. And I remember doing a radio show and having a guy on from Washington, and we kind of debated it back and forth. And to me, it was a no-brainer that it was Andrew Luck. But RG3 was a really good player and obviously a dynamic Heisman Trophy winner, a guy probably that listens to a little Clayton Anderson from time to time. And he's got a podcast, Out of Pocket, with RG3. And in it, and I assume this is from yesterday, but certainly from since Saturday, he is a guy that, you know, played at a big-time program, played at Baylor, won a Heisman, has been in the NFL, and certainly knows the game. And would have no reason to really give props to a school like Indiana that, as we talked about earlier with Chris Ditto, I thought it was interesting when Ditto said, you know, look, I'm traveling right now, and I'm in Georgia, and I don't usually wear like an Indiana hat or an Indiana shirt. And he's like, and now I'm wearing it all the time because I'm proud to be like, you know, somebody that played football in Indiana. And RG3 apparently is totally on board. RG3, Robert Griffin III, the Out of Pocket podcast, was talking about his overall observations of college football, and lo and behold, RG3, let me ask you this. Who do you believe is the top team in the land? Who is the best? Ohio State. Ohio State's ranked number 1. Ohio State, Ryan Day, defending national champs, talent all over the place, 5 stars galore. How can anybody top Ohio State? But RG3, you tell me who's tops in the land.
Country, and Kurt Cignetti has them playing. Indiana is the best team in the country, and Kurt Cignetti has them playing at a high level. And I understand people are wary because of last year. They got blown out in the college football playoff, and that makes you hold that against them. But they went on the road and beat Oregon, who I had ranked as the number 1 team in the country going into this week, in front of a sold-out crowd. That, to me, if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And Oregon was the man, and Indiana did it. I know, Ohio State, number 1 in the AP poll. And yes, they're the reigning national champions, and they have looked impressive this year. But I do believe Indiana is the best team in the country because of the way they beat Oregon.
Now, he was so emphatic about it that he even hiccuped in the beginning and said it twice. Indiana, number 1 in the country. Now, the one thing you can say to that is, well, wait a minute. By his own admission, a week ago, Oregon was the best team in the country. So then you could say, okay, so if Indiana went in and beat Oregon, then yes, the rationale is Indiana's number 1. And I like the fact that he is giving them their props of, hey, they have the most impressive win in college football right now. They do. However, Do we question his assessment of what makes somebody number one if he thought Oregon was number one and not Ohio State to begin going into that game? But nonetheless, I think when you look at it, and there is, whether you believe it or not, there is a bias towards name recognition. And Indiana, to a lot of people, even with everything that they do, is still going to get hesitancy from some folks because, and I understand this, it's Indiana. You know, kind of like let's be real. When you buy a pair of Adidas or you buy a polo, whatever it might be, and you buy it at a discount store as opposed to Saks Fifth Avenue, it's the same shoe, it's the same shirt, it's the same quality, but there's this stigma of, yeah, but it must be like an outdated version, or there's got to be something like, I'm going to look and see if there's something irregular about it, because why did it end up at a discount store? Is it a year-old version? Is it like a 2023 model? Like, what's the deal here? Why? And I'll just tell everybody I bought it at Saks. Because name clout, branding goes a long way. And the branding of a Georgia, we still think, and it is surreal to me, believe me, when you think on paper, Ohio State's a little different because there's familiarity because it's a Big Ten team. But I will be the first to admit, and Indiana fans probably going to hate me for saying it. Purdue fans are going to hate me for saying it. Notre Dame fans are going to hate me for saying it. I will admit to the fact that there is, to me, a bit of a bias and just a fear factor, for lack of a better phrase, about the SEC. Because when I think of the SEC, and I think about, now Texas this year has been a whole different mystery, but, you know, Georgia, Alabama, even Ole Miss, even though Ole Miss is kind of the Penn State of the SEC. I mean, they do this every year. You get excited, and then reality eventually kicks in. But all of those schools and programs, you're talking about 100,000 people at night, under the lights, national television, drunken, rowdy. Listen, I went to a Tennessee game against South Carolina 15 years ago. A night game, 7:30 kick. Tennessee was it was the end of the full, matter of fact, it was the game that I think probably was the end of Phil Fulmer's time at Tennessee. South Carolina came in and beat them, and it relegated Tennessee into, I think they ended up going to like the Liberty Bowl. You know, and Tennessee was accustomed to, it was an insult to go to the Citrus Bowl, and they went even lower than that. But this, even in a down Tennessee year, raucous environment, 100,000 people, and I'm watching just the build-up to the game, and then I actually watched a co-ed puke from the walkway like 4 floors up, like leaning over, and like people are celebrating it, and I'm just thinking, this is a whole different animal. And it was an awesome environment. I mean, the checkerboard and everything else. I mean, Knoxville was electric. But my point being, even in the SEC, even in down years, you ain't getting some afternoon game against Minnesota or a crowd in Rutgers. Every single game you play in the SEC, you are going up against, it's you against the world. Literally, it's you against the world. And so there is a branding that comes with that. There's this expectation, in my opinion, in my thought, in my mind, in my association, that a Georgia or an Alabama or a Tennessee or an LSU, that they are just on a different level. And it is still, to me, surreal, admittedly, to think that Indiana, the Fightin' Hoosiers of Indiana, have gotten themselves into that realm. It does feel very strange to me. Back into the Colts, what Shane Steichen had to say about who's in, who's out for their game coming up this weekend. And I will tell you about the TV show I watched last night, because it does have a sports theme. Next. Who do we got here?
Tracy Bird.
Say again?
Tracy Bird.
Tracy Burke. Okay.
Bird. Like the flying things.
Okay. And how big a star is Tracy Burke? I mean, listen, I'm totally opening myself up for people to mock me, right? Because I don't dislike that style of music. I just was never that into it, especially back then. How big a star is Tracy Bird?
The mid-'90s, he was pretty big, but as we got into the later 90s, he kind of fell off the face of the earth.
Okay. Clipped the wing, did he?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Shane Steichen has a new quarterback in the mix. And by that, I mean not really. But we'll get into that in a second. Speaking of new quarterbacks, I'm curious if anybody else, I've mentioned this before. Is anybody else watching Chad Powers? Am I the only one watching this show? This chair is really noisy, by the way. Corbin, have you seen Chad Powers?
Like the first 2 episodes.
Liked it or didn't like it?
I liked it, but I hate when streaming services do this. They release them a week or 2 at a time.
Okay.
I want to binge them, Jake.
No, you're not wrong. And I'll tell you what. Here's the problem with what you're talking about. And you see this a lot with these shows. A lot of times, Stick is another example where they have a show and you like it, but then they have not necessarily they haven't been picked up yet for another season. So it's during the time that you're watching it where they then get the go-ahead to do another season. So then you have to wait several months, and by the time and you either this happened to me with Ozark. With Ozark, which was a great show, I loved Ozark, and I can't remember how many seasons Ozark was, but the last season of Ozark, there was a sizable gap before it was released. And Ozark is a show that there were so many characters and intricacies and storylines that it was easy to lose track of it all. So when I went back to watch the final season, I watched like the first episode and was like, wait, I don't remember who is this guy again? And what? And so I completely lost attention span for it. Dead to Me is another one where the same thing happened. I mean, I really loved one of the seasons and like binge watched it, one of those, like, I've got to get to bed, but I got to watch another episode. And then, I had to wait forever. And then by then it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. So Chad Powers, for those that are unfamiliar, and it's like Saved by the Bell. It's so bad, it's good. It's very likable. It's totally hokey. It's totally campy. It's totally unrealistic. But Eli Manning and Peyton Manning and Omaha Productions, Eli Manning is one of the producers for it. And if you're not familiar with it, folks, it's on Hulu. And there was a couple of years ago a skit where Eli Manning went in disguise and went to, I can't remember what school it was, and acted like he was going to be a walk-on quarterback. And, of course, the coaches knew who it was. But, all these players were like, who is this dude? Like, he's just throwing it on a rope, like, 60 yards and whatever else. And then they unveil and show that it's actually Eli Manning. So it's based off of that. And the plot of the show, non-spoiler alert, is a quarterback at Oregon who's a big-time player, and then he kind of falls out of favor. His eligibility is up, and he then figures out a way to basically Mrs. Doubtfire disguise himself in a water boy type situation and then go to a small school and try out as the quarterback and walk onto the team as the new quarterback. And so that's that's kind of the storyline of all of it. Was it Penn State where Eli Manning went and punked him basically?
Yeah.
Okay. So this particular show, anyway, last night there was a new show that was out, and I watched it, and it's pretty enjoyable. And I actually now there's kind of a hook, a tease, if you will, for another episode, and I'm actually looking forward to it. So we'll see what happens with the show itself. But when it comes to quarterbacks and quarterbacks that people are surprised when they show up, perhaps that was the thought for the Colts because of the fact that they held, and we now know, Anthony Richardson on IR. Relatively, assuming that Daniel Jones stays healthy, relatively insignificant in the grand scheme of things because of the fact that Daniel Jones is going to be the guy taking all the snaps. But they worked out yesterday 4 quarterbacks. After working out 4 quarterbacks, they then decide to sign Brett Rippon, who most recently was in Cincinnati, was released there. His uncle Mark Rippon was, of course, a great quarterback in the NFL that played in the Super Bowl, was a backup for the Colts for Peyton Manning at the twilight of his career. And the question became, okay, so does that mean that Riley Leonard, who a lot of people at the beginning of the year were like, let's see what Riley Leonard could do before we knew just how good Daniel Jones, for example, was going to be. The question became, okay, so Riley Leonard, if they have Riley Leonard in the mix and Anthony Richardson is on IR and then they go out and they get somebody, does that mean that Riley Leonard still waits his turn as a young player and Brett Rippon now all of a sudden is the guy that because he has had starts in the NFL, that's who you go with and that's your backup? How is that going to work out? Shane Steichen did exactly address exactly that. Here is Shane Steichen on the fact that they had 4 quarterbacks yesterday that worked out. Brett Rippon was not one of them. But that's who they go with. But what does it mean, Shane Steichen, now that you've signed Brett Rippon on Riley Leonard and which one becomes the primary backup?
Yeah, Brett Rippon, he'll be here later today. He's flying in, but excited about him. Obviously, a guy that's been doing it for a long time to the practice squad. Riley will be our backup this week. I love Riley. I think Riley's came in with the right mindset from day one, the way he works, the way he prepares. So it's a hell of an opportunity for Riley this week. And then, like I said, he'll be our backup this week, and then we'll see how everything goes, through the next couple of weeks.
Now, the other question was this for Shane Steichen. With Anthony Richardson and the injury to the eye, and we know what that means. And Richardson is a guy that was not going to be taking snaps unless something happened to Daniel Jones regardless. But you have other key injuries for the Colts. And when you think about going up against Justin Herbert and the offense of the Chargers and the challenge thereof, and I love Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh and his ability to kind of awaken quarterbacks. Herbert is a player that Jimmy Johnson has said if he had the number 1 pick right now in the NFL, this was last year he said this, but the guy he would select would be Justin Herbert to lead his team. Big arm. He was the first guy, Justin Herbert, that I ever heard the term arm talent. We would like his arm talent. What do you mean? Like it comes out and it plays the violin? No. Arm talent. He can throw the ball from any number of ways, across the field, long ball, whatever. But health has been at times a challenge for Herbert, and then just getting that offense going with Jim Harbaugh. But you know that there is a challenge there in trying to slow down that passing game for the Chargers. They have not protected Herbert well, but he still can put the ball where it needs to go. So then you wonder about Mooney Ward, notably, who had the freak concussion take place in the pregame against Arizona. Kenny Moore, who's been out. And then you have Jalen Jones that you're still waiting to get back as well. So a lot of areas of health. Here is Shane Steichen on updates on a trio of players and who we may or may not see on Sunday.
As you guys know, we put AR on IR. He'll miss at least 4 weeks. I don't have an exact timetable on it. He'll be in and out, getting checkups, but he'll still be engaged, be in meetings, but obviously he'll have some medical attention and just praying for a healthy recovery there. Mooney is in the protocol, so we'll see how the week goes. Kenny Moore will return to practice today. He'll go through some individual and get him some reps today, so good to have him back.
Okay, so that's where things stand. Joel Erickson coming up about 20 minutes from now. We'll get even more on the expectations for Sunday with the Colts themselves. But I mentioned this earlier. When we talk about the Colts and you look at sports in general, the Colts are, I think for a lot of people, this particular group it endears. We find it endearing. And we did as well when, if you look in this town at the greatest teams that we've seen, the teams that we have most celebrated, there are really three that come to mind. The Peyton Manning era Colts, because they won a Super Bowl. The Reggie Miller era Pacers, because that was the first one from an NBA standpoint that broke through. And yes, obviously the ABA Pacers, it goes without saying. And then the NBA Pacers. And then the Pacers group that we currently are seeing. And now this Colts team in terms of this surprise and where they are. And one of the things I think that makes us different, it makes Indianapolis different. And it's why I'm the first to admit I could not do this job in Tampa. I couldn't do this job in Phoenix. I couldn't do this job in Denver because I can't go in and speak to what it means to be a native of those places. I can't speak to, and I think you can sometimes sense through it when people are trying to be a part of it or trying to say they know the fabric and the foundation of something if they don't organically. And in this city, the thing that makes us unique, we have a lot of differences in this town. We have a lot of backgrounds in this town, and we have a lot of challenges as a people in this town, certainly. But one thing that, for the most part, bonds us all is we all have within us the same understanding of what it means to be part of and from this town. And we don't have the skyline of New York City, and we don't have the beaches of Miami, and we don't have the weather of Los Angeles, and we don't have the mountains of Denver. But what we have is still a pride about being from Indianapolis. And we respect and we admire and we appreciate when the teams that we pull for have that same foundation. And that group that I'm talking about with the Reggie Miller era Pacers did not happen overnight. They drafted Reggie Miller. They drafted Rick Smits. They drafted Dale Davis. And we watched it all come together, and we watched these players that took one step and then another step and then another step year by year, and that's why we fell in love with it. And the Peyton Manning era Colts, Peyton Manning as a rookie threw for more interceptions than anybody in the history of the league as a rookie. Peyton Manning as a rookie won 3 games. And then they drafted Edgerrin James, and they drafted Dallas Clark, and they drafted Dwight Freeney. And we watched it come together, and we loved it because we saw this group of players that bonded together, like those Pacers teams, partially based on wanting to prove people wrong. And that's what we in Indiana like to do. We like to prove people wrong. When we go somewhere and we say we're from Indianapolis and people are like, oh, no place? And like, no. I'm going to prove you wrong. It's a cool city. We have a lot to offer here. We have a lot going for us. And this particular Colts team, yes, I realized that Daniel Jones was a free agent signing. He was not organically grown and watered and planted here in Indianapolis, but he's proving people wrong. He's coming here after being dispatched by the big skyline of New York. And it's like he's going to come here and prove them wrong. And the Colts organization is proving the Giants wrong. And Michael Pittman Jr., big L.A. guy, but he comes to Indianapolis and he plays through injury. And he throws a block to free up Jonathan Taylor. And he gives up his body and his own glory at times for the better of the team to prove people wrong. And the Pacers roster of a year ago that went to the finals, and it's why I said I literally was willing to sacrifice and punt and give up my objectivity, my professionalism of being able to just come out and say, I'm not a fan of a team. I'm rather here to sit here and say, here's what happened in the game last night, and let you folks then determine whether that was right or wrong. And with that Pacers group, I was liberated. I was like, this weight came off of me when I came on the air and said, I'm going to root for this team outwardly, and I'm going to cheerlead for this team outwardly because they are this close to an NBA title, and they make me again proud to be from here. And I bleed the torch anyway, right? But it was a group made up of Aaron Nesmith. I mean, I've gone over all of it, and I went over all of it during the finals. It is a group of players that was made up of and come together to prove people wrong. Obi Toppin wanted to prove wrong that the Knicks didn't use him enough. Aaron Nesmith wanted to prove wrong that the Boston Celtics buried him and didn't give him the right opportunity. Tyrese Halliburton wanted to prove wrong that the Sacramento Kings erred in making him think he was going to be a cornerstone of their franchise and then going in an opposite direction and sending him elsewhere. And each of those players came together collectively to say, we are going to come together for the betterment of a team as opposed to individual. And that's what we love and ask for of our teams. And it's why, for example, in the Major League Baseball playoffs, I'm watching last night, and, you know, Toronto, I mean, I like the Blue Jays, right? But the Blue Jays have the 5th highest payroll in Major League Baseball. The New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox, unless you are a fan of one of those two teams, you probably root against them just because of what it stands for. The Los Angeles Dodgers, I mean, the best player in baseball, Shohei Ohtani, plays for them. You know why? Because they said, here's like $300 million, just come here and we'll even defer it if we have to. Who cares? And their payroll is astronomical. And look, we can envy that, and I'm not saying that we don't to an extent, but we like foundation of principle and morality and togetherness. It's what makes us different as a city than a lot of places. Like, we don't have the glitz and glamour of the other places, but we have the fact that we a pride and, to an extent, an inferiority complex about being from Indiana. And it's what I love about Reggie Miller. And it's why, if you have not heard this yet, you're going to love it. And if you have, you're going to love it even more the second time or the third. Tyrese Halliburton during the NBA Finals had, and I was concerned about it. Open disclaimer, I was concerned about it. I've been burnt. I'd been burnt in this town. I'd been burnt by Paul George, who didn't have what I'm talking about and wanted to go elsewhere. I've been burnt by Victor Oladipo, who didn't have what I'm talking about and thought he had outgrown Indiana, even though it was the place that he was able to make a name for himself collegiately and then even professionally. Then all of a sudden he's on The Masked Singer and he's a big star and he's putting out albums and he's going down to Miami to rehab and he's not coming back to stand on the sidelines with his teammates and etc. Okay? And all of those things, Oladipo got too big. Paul George got too big. I remember asking Paul George when he first started to hit the scene of the NBA and raise eyebrows about his skill set and his promise. And here's this kid from Riverside, Fresno, California, etc. And he comes here and I say, are you aware of the fact that you're basically blowing up before our eyes? And he's like, I am aware of it. And it didn't take long before Paul George, who's not a bad guy, nice guy, but Paul George didn't have it in him. He needed the glitz and glamour elsewhere. But Reggie Miller, out of UCLA, drafted to Indiana. And I said during the finals, the thing I loved about it is Reggie Miller finally was able to, in fact, let the rest of the world know. I realized that after playing for Indiana for 18 seasons and leaving Indiana and becoming a big TV star and going on TNT and working for TNT and doing games on the sidelines and becoming their chief guy, at his core, he still deep down was never able to completely shed internally the fact that he was a Hoosier. And he understood and grasped and saw what it meant to have that morality, that principle, that foundation of the togetherness of this town. And finally, during the finals, he was able to say, I'm going to surrender my objectivity. I'm going to embrace my fandom. I'm going to let the entire world know that when it comes down to it, I am still proud to be an Indiana Pacer. And he's on the sidelines, and he's cheering, and they're playing Hoosiers on the Jumbotron, and he's standing up, and he's leading the crowd, just like a typical fan, except for the fact he's sitting courtside, with his kid, wearing his jeans and a Pacer jersey, cheering on that team a year ago. And while he's doing it, he is cheering for Tyrese Halliburton, who has a film crew following him around for a show that's going to be released on, I believe it's Netflix, but a show that is following around Tyrese Halliburton. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, no. Not with Tyrese Halliburton, please. Don't let him become Paul George. Don't let him become Victor Oladipo. Don't let him, like when Paul George went on late night television dressed like Michael Jackson from the Thriller video, and I thought, oh my gosh, here it is. This is the beginning of the end. He's gotten too big for Indiana. He's too big a star. He's got a stylist now. Don't let it be Victor Oladipo who's going on The Masked Singer and is releasing albums. Don't let this film crew ruin Tyrese Halliburton. And then last night, I see the sneak peek clip from it of Reggie Miller talking about Tyrese Halliburton, and it is glorious.
Look at Game 6 and Game 7 of the NBA Finals. There will never, ever be a question of a guy's heart, will, determination, his game. No one will ever second guess any decision that he ever makes again. He risked it all. He risked it all for a franchise, for a state, for an organization. How many guys in life, how many women in life are willing to risk it all? Risk it all. But this comes back full circle moment to what's it like to be a Hoosier and to play in Indiana. I'm not playing for myself. I'm playing for that dude. Playing for that dude. I'm playing for these people. That's what it's like to be an Indiana Pacers. So thank you, Tyrese.
Love it. I absolutely love it. And I think there's a lesson to be said there. Now, when you say risk it all, I mean, we obviously hope that Tyrese Halliburton is going to come back. And as he said, he's going to do everything he can to get back to what he was before. And we don't know how his body's going to respond to that. And risk it all, I mean, it's not like it was a life or death situation, but from a career standpoint, it may well have been. But I think there's something to be said there to be had right now from Reggie Miller and that standpoint of the fact that it's not about me. It's about that teammate, and it's about the people of Indiana and being an Indiana Pacer. And Reggie Miller, who is a global icon, Olympic gold medalist, television analyst, at his core still is an Indiana Pacer. And we in Indianapolis can learn from that because we have our differences and we have our differing opinions and we have our politics and we have all of those things. But at its core, when it comes down to it, the one thing that intertwines all of us is we're all from the same place, and it's Indianapolis. And those guys came here and saw it in us and said, I want to be that way too. And that's why those two guys, and the story remains to be told on Tyrese Halliburton and where it goes from here. I get that. But I love the fact and will forever love the fact that Reggie Miller gets it. He always got it, and he still gets it. And he passed that torch and that statement, and I'm here for it. Joel A. Erickson joins us next. know me a little boot scooting boogie. I do know this one. Is this Brooks and Dunn?
Yep.
What year are we talking in this? 92, 91, something like that?
Oh, it's slipping me. I think 92.
When I was in college, I had some buddies that were big country music guys, so I certainly know that song. Joining us now, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so based on that introduction on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. He is with the Indianapolis Star, Colts beat writer. You hear him a lot on this radio station. Joel A. Erickson joining us. Joel, let's get to the meat of the matter first, and that is we played it earlier, Shane Steichen talking about from a health standpoint. Doesn't look like other than Kenny Moore, really anybody might be making the trip back against the Chargers. But let's begin with that. Kenny Moore, do you expect him to be available on Sunday?
You know, he was doing a little bit more than I was expecting today at practice, so maybe that's a good sign in terms of him being out there. We only see the individual period, but they did a little bit of team stuff at the end, and I felt like he was doing some stuff, so maybe that's a good sign for Kenny Moore getting back.
I'd like to know this. Who do you think right now, like Jalen Jones, for example, he's a guy that we almost forget about. I hate to say that because he's a good player, but, it's been so long, right? Do we have a timetable on Jalen Jones? And then I'll begin with that. I got a follow-up. Timetable on Jalen Jones, what do you think?
Yeah, I asked that and didn't really get much back, which is generally not a good sign in terms of getting him back. I keep thinking that he's a healthy Jalen Jones is the key for this secondary with everybody hurt so much. But it just doesn't seem like he must have really got that hamstring pretty good.
Okay, so the better question is this. Healthier or in more pristine shape? Jalen Jones hamstring right now or Joel A. Erickson last night in the 5th inning of the Brewers-Dodgers game?
Jalen Jones. I was like, his was the hamstring, and me was like the existential realities of baseball. That's where I was. I was way too deep.
So your Brewers fandom is what on a 1 to 10 scale?
I think most people would say a 10. Yeah. Like I know the guys that they call up for 3 days, and I watch. That's pretty much what I watch during the summer on TV. If you let me, if my family doesn't have anything else to do, as like 6 planes go overhead here at the Colts facility, that's what I'm watching. I probably watch parts of like 100 games a year, if we're being honest.
But by the way, just so you know, Joel, you ready for me to introduce you to something that your life will never again be the same?
Let's do it.
There's an app, okay? I've got an app on my phone called Plane Finder. Are you familiar with Plane Finder?
I think so.
Now, it's not as relevant over there off of Eagle Creek Airport because those are just little like crop duster private planes, those kind of planes. But, maybe I'm the only person, and I'm going to change the lives of at least the life of at least one person listening right now, Joel. And there's only 4 listening, so I've got a 25% chance here. So the Plane Finder app. Let me ask you this, Joel Erickson. Have you ever looked up in the sky and you just see like a tracer of a plane like way up there, and you're just like, I wonder, like, where's that plane going? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Plane Finder is an app that literally you look up and you're like, oh gosh, look right there. And then I play every time, I see one of those planes up there, and I'm like, I wonder where that's going. And then I look it up, and I'm like, oh wow, that plane's going from Oakland to Baltimore, and it just happens to be flying over Indianapolis right now. And then I envision like there's some, somebody up there climbing over somebody to go to the restroom, and they're handing out Cokes and whatever else, and it fascinates me. Now, does this make me weird?
No, because like you're telling me this, that another one of these crop dusters goes over. How many of these do they send off?
Well, there's a lot of crops, right?
It's like the 4th one in like the last 30 seconds.
They know you're on the radio, right?
The thing about this is you shouldn't have told me about this because my house in Fishers feels like it's part of one of the, I don't know, approach lanes or whatever for for the Indianapolis airport?
It's the FedEx planes.
Like, they go over my house all the time.
At night, like because I know this because Shannon's would be right directly in the path. I know where you live. The beer ferry once told me where you live, right? And so
right.
I have a general idea of the vicinity, and it's the FedEx planes at night. I'm telling you, it's just one after another after another, right?
What it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, they're going all night.
Hey, is this matchup with the Chargers the best thing to happen for the Colts to try to reawaken consistency with their pass rush just because of an odd susceptibility on the offensive line of Los Angeles?
It depends, I think, on whether or not Joe Alt is back. I have not seen a Chargers practice report today yet, but there was some talk that maybe he could be back from his high ankle sprain. He's very good, and I think that if Joe Alt is back, that maybe it's not. If it's both of those guys out, if it's Alt and then their swing tackle, whose name is Trey Pipkins, was also out last week. If both of those guys are out, I think it is. But if they're back, even if they're compromised, I think that's probably better for them.
Trey Pipkins sounds like a fictional character in a Beverly Cleary kid book, doesn't it?
1,000%. Yes, absolutely.
Little freckly kid, red hair, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Red dresses like Waldo. Yeah. Trey Pipkins. Okay.
And his sister's name is Lindsey Pipkins. He used to play for the Colts.
That's exactly right. Joel A. Erickson is our guest. He is on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Joel, the quarterback situation is one that I'm curious of this point. Obviously, if Daniel Jones, we now know. I mean, if Daniel Jones is the guy, and so long as he's healthy, he's going to be the guy. We know that. But if something were to happen and Riley Leonard gets in, do you believe now that Riley Leonard, because during the time that Anthony Richardson is on injured reserve, does Riley Leonard, once Brett Rippon gets up to speed, would he go back to being the backup and Leonard goes back to being the emergency number 3? Or is Riley Leonard potentially within grasp of being able, as people have wanted to see, what he can do?
I don't know where the Colts stand on this, but I kind of think that the right thing to do in this situation might be to just go with Riley Leonard as the backup. Brett Rippon is a guy he's obviously been around the league a lot, but he hasn't really started a game in a couple of years now. The last time he started was a one-off with the Rams, and I think the Rams had to go out and get somebody after that one. He was available for a reason. That was the biggest thing with this Richardson injury, was just your options were not very good. Taylor Heineke is out there somewhere. I don't know if Taylor Heineke is looking for like a big season-ending injury to jump in somewhere or whatever. But outside of Heineke, most of the names were kind of guys like this who are kind of been, number 3s in the NFL. And I think if you're looking at it as this guy's a number 3 in the NFL, I think you just go with Leonard.
Yeah, and in addition to that, Leonard's a guy that you're going to have for a while, right? As opposed to, you know what I mean? Like, he's not a rental, so you might as well see what you have there and then see if you grow from it. I mean, that would make sense, right? Otherwise, why is he on the roster?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, they brought him in developmental, like he's a developmental guy that they hope turns into a backup. Well, you might as well jumpstart it because you don't have a backup who you clearly think is ahead of him. At least I don't think so at this point. Now, the Colts might see it differently. They might feel like you need the experience depending on the matchup or whatever. I think everyone over here is probably just hoping that Daniel Jones doesn't get hurt. But, I think that if it was me just thinking about where they're at, I might just stick with Riley Leonard.
Speaking of progress, how would you assess Liatu Latu?
He's struggling. He's not doing enough. I feel like we saw the Rams game. He looked great in the Rams game. That's really been the only game this year where I've felt him as a difference-making presence that he has to be off the edge. They had some quarterback hits last week, but I feel like most of those were because Jacoby Brissett holds the ball because he's unafraid of getting hit. He just takes it. They needed Latu, and they still need Latu for this defense to really have a shot with the cornerback situation the way it is. Like, he really has to be a big-time player off the edge. It just hasn't been consistent enough. I think it's imperative, though, because DeForest Buckner is basically facing a guard and a center or a guard and a tackle every time he rushes. So at some point, somebody else needs to become a difference maker. Latu seems like the best one. He just hasn't really been that so far.
It is partially because of Joel A. Erickson is our guest from the Indianapolis Star. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. It is partially because of the health of players in front of him, and perhaps partially still a hangover from the mistakes that he has made. But Joel, what is it going to take to get A.D. Mitchell back on the field regularly?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting to me what to see that they made him, inactive, and I think it's some of the stuff that's hard for us to see. It's the behind the scenes stuff. It's probably a lot of practice stuff that we don't get to see because we go to practice, but we only go to the first 20 minutes before they do any of the real stuff. So I think that's a big part of it. It's going to be some of that stuff that we don't necessarily get to see or have like a handle on. But it's very interesting that they made him inactive last week after benching him the previous week.
Okay, most importantly, are you resigned to the fact that the Brewers, at this point, are you just hoping non-sweep? Or are you like, no, listen, they had a great year, best record in baseball, I think, for the vast majority of it. They can now turn it on. If I'm not mistaken, this year the Brewers had 6 different 15-game win streaks, right? So, like, what the hell what's with 4, right?
I am somebody who knows, as a big baseball fan, I am somebody who knows all of the precedents and teams that go down 2-0 when they were playing at home are like 24 of 27 or something like that in Major League history, and in terms of not being able to come back. So I am just in the spot where I'm like, well, they need a miracle. That's where we're at. We need a miraculous thing to get in the World Series. I would like to see them not swing at every pitch that the Dodgers starter throws in Games 3 and Games 4, but we'll see where it goes.
Well, do you remember the song, Joel? In conclusion, do you remember the song? I'm a terrible singer. Okay, all I need is a miracle. Do you know that song? All I need is a miracle. All I need.
Yep.
Do you know who sings that song?
I do not.
That is, I believe, Mike and the Mechanics. And if I'm not mistaken, I could be totally wrong in this, but I'm looking it up right now. Mike Rutherford of Mike and the Mechanics. Even though he is British, I believe at some point, I don't know why I'm thinking this, at some point I think he lived in Milwaukee. If not, then we're going to claim that he did, and therefore that's good news for the Brewers.
Well, I hope so. The only shred of hope I have left is that I have thought that this team was done like 6 times this year. But this time the history is on my side. I don't know if the other times it was or if it was just me being pessimistic, but this time the history is on my side that it's going to take a miracle to get into the World Series.
If they don't make the World Series, then what you can do is download the Plane Finder app and just sit out in the backyard and mesmerize yourself. Laugh.
That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea.
You laugh, but I'm telling you, I'm going to get a text from you one of these days that just says, by the way, LaGuardia to Albuquerque, and for some reason right over my house. It's fascinating. I just changed your life.
That's not a bad idea. Because I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, I normally watch the World Series, but I'm really not going to want to if it's the Dodgers versus somebody. Maybe I'll just turn it on and go outside and just kind of look at Plane Finder for a while and then just check the score on the way
I'm telling you what, like you and the character Tyler Pipkin or whatever his name is, like, can just sit around and in your little fictional book. All right, Joel, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll let you get back to work.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on.
Joel A. Erickson joining us on the program. We'll come back. It is the crossover. We'll find out what J&V has lined up for his big show, which gets underway in just about 16 minutes. Crossover, of course, brought to you each and every day by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website, 317-353-2141. Big show today. Appreciate everybody that participated, chimed in. I think tomorrow what I need to do a better job of, and it's sometimes it's tough because I know JMV does it a lot, is incorporate the text line. I need to get into that a little more and read some of your reactions, including, for that matter, the bad. Not everybody that writes in or sends me stuff is a fan. Believe ye me, I see it all. But probably should do that tomorrow, get into that a little bit. Ralph Reef, really appreciate his time earlier, and those of you that reached out to say that you enjoyed hearing him. I think he does do an outstanding job of assessing injuries, but doing so for people like myself to understand because, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, the sharpest knife in the drawer, whichever way you want to say it. Chris Ditto, I thought it was great when he said, look, I'm finally now able to again wear stuff that say that I played football at Indiana and be proud of it, which was cool. And then, of course, Coach Karras, Joel A. Erickson. So loaded show today. JMV has arrived. A lot of fun yesterday, I assume, right?
Great time yesterday, buddy. Great time at Behringer's. Behringer's, South Meridian. A lot of honking going on.
I heard the honking.
A lot of horniness, evidently, with the honking if you're horny stuff happening right there. It was awesome, man. I love it. Rob and the gang down there, Jake, just do a great job. Hey, tomorrow, Westfield, Joe's Grill. Yeah. Varsity Bourbon Locks, Luna's Old Tequila Shots, and Ale Emporium Friday in Castleton.
What's lined up on your big show for today?
Dan Wetzel is going to go over IU football, as you talked to Ditto about a little bit earlier, and probably some Signetti stuff and, college football landscape look as things are evolving and changing. And IU's taking advantage of those changes right now. If you can generate the revenue and you offer that cash out, they're going to come. So this is not the old school days any longer.
It does make you wonder, John, could Signetti, could he be doing this in 2005? You know what I mean? I think
he would be a good coach then, just like he is right now. But I think
it's almost like it was all the perfect storm, right?
Yeah, I think the landscape certainly has changed to where it's more viable for a team, a program like IU, if you have some funding to get things going.
Yeah, but it is still surreal to me, as we've talked about the fact that, we played Robert Griffin III, said, look, they're the best team in college football. They're the best team in the country right now. They certainly have. I think it's indisputable they have the most impressive win, right?
Yeah.
That win over Oregon.
And that's impressive. And then you look at it with Matt Painter and Purdue basketball to where it's kind of like old school bringing me. I know that they're getting paid too, and I know that Braden gets paid and the stars get paid and all that, but it's still guys that have been within the program more so than really anything else. I think this is like the first off season where Matt has actually gone in significantly more, meaning a couple, into the transfer portal, but still trying to go by what he believes in, bringing guys in there that actually care about the surroundings.
Man, it makes you wonder with the way that they do it. It's interesting because you have the Indiana football side of things, which is using to their benefit to an extent, the portal and the NIL to their advantage, and then the Purdue side that, from a basketball standpoint, to your point, John, has really kind of bucked it to this point and managed to not fall victim to it, but you wonder how long that's going to last. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that we saw some evolution of thinking this year, did we not, with Matt? Bringing in a couple of guys. Yeah, you have to, what do they say?
But it's still not the, and they did go out and shore up some areas, but their core still in that three. I think the bigger thing that's impressive is that they didn't lose anybody to that. Mm-hmm. Let me take that back. Miles Colvin was, a really good player, but I'm saying, of their big three, the fact that all of those guys were willing to come back is impressive.
Where did Cole? I forgot where Colvin went. Where did he go?
Wake Forest. Is that right?
Did he go to Wake?
I think it's Wake Forest. Yeah, is where he ended up. But nonetheless,
one more playing time. I still love the Matt philosophy as well. You get more playing time if you played good enough to deserve that playing time.
Right.
They're not playing any favorites here. We are playing the guys that are playing well and
earn the playing time.
Hey, did you how much time we have, Corbin? We got to run. We could save this for another day. Save it for another day. So, did you see there was a back and forth that Dustin DePurak had, who covers the Pacers, between, I think it was Bowen was in there too, where once upon a time those guys played like the staff of IU in a pickup basketball game. Did you see that a little bit earlier today?
Which guys you're saying?
Well, DePurak, I think they were all IU guys. I think it was Bowen, DePurak, Tony Andragna, who does some good stuff too and is still around, or at least last time I think. Is he the head coach now at Greenwood Christian? Is Tony?
Is that where he is?
I think he's a coach now, or at least should be a coach because he's a very knowledgeable dude, good dude. But I kind of had mentioned it'd be great if we could round up some dudes in the media and play the Pacer staff. Now, that'd probably be more difficult than trying to get somebody on the air for me, but
now
it'd be fun as hell.
Who would be the best player in the Pacer staff?
Pargo?
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, Buchanan can play, right?
Huh?
Ryan Carr can shoot.
Buchanan. I try to get Buchanan out with me all the time, and he always says, well, I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt.
I mean, I can understand
so nobody's going to hurt you.
Listen,
I would deal with. I feel comfortable in playing Ryan Carr. Well, I love Ryan Carr, but I feel comfortable in playing Ryan Carr and Buchanan for that matter. But Pargo may be a different story.
I mean, Carlisle could probably still play.
Pargo would be a story. There's some on that bench and on that staff that probably can play a little bit too. But,
Jenny's probably better than all of us.
How about Jenny?
Yeah, she's probably better than all of us.
Jenny Busek probably can play, right?
Totally.
So, but I would like to do that sometime. So put that on the list with trying to get a player on my show with maybe getting together with those guys and having a pickup game sometime.
All right, we'll write that down, right? Maybe that should be it.
I'm making a list.
You win the pickup game, you get a player on,
That'd
right?
be great. Wow. All right. I'm going to go out there and play hard then.
JMV's up next. We will be back with you at noon tomorrow, and I thank you for listening to Query & Company.